Jim had talked about what was happening at the state level years back, about 2008 time frame. We were all very watchful and enthusiastic about the type of resources that we saw evolving, key partners up in Tallahassee at the time. There was a lot of talk also going on about federal agency policies with respect to a comprehensive energy strategic plan or a comprehensive energy plan at the federal level. And I would say that that really served as the initial introduction of all of us coming together and working collectively as we were looking at the potential for something happening and being significant through federal initiatives. But we were also very concerned about having the potential to be lost in that conversation, the issues of climate adaptation. And of course, that's one of the things that the South Florida community is particularly, I think, is sensitive to, because we are familiar with the vulnerabilities of our region to extreme events and the potential that climate change poses for really increasing the severity and frequency of those types of impacts, as well as the general vulnerabilities that we have because of just being a flat, low-lying region, the fact that our water supplies are vulnerable. Climate change in particular has a potential to dramatically alter our physical environment and the very resources that we need to support our communities. And so this led a contingency of our leaderships and staff to participate in discussions in Washington. And ultimately, we realized that there was great power in coming together as a region with a collective voice to have this conversation, but that it needed to be a lot broader. So shortly after a spring event in Washington, D.C., we came back, and maybe you all participated, but we held our first Southeast Florida Regional Climate Change Compact, our summit, excuse me, in October of 2009. And the conversation was really focused on this is a region of shared systems, watersheds, airsheds, transportation systems. We commute back and forth. We share critical, vital, natural resources. We have very strong, similar interests. We're all working individually on these initiatives, but how about bringing together our resources and working regionally and see if we can't really get some additional traction and more effective outcomes by taking that regional approach, and recognizing too that so many of the issues are so interconnected that we may not stand to be able to make the same sort of headway without working regionally. And so this led to the development of the Southeast Florida Regional Climate Change Compact, which was a formal agreement between the 4 counties of Palm Beach, Miami-Dade, Monroe, and Broward to work together collectively on addressing climate mitigation and adaptation issues. The compact document was then taken before the individual commissions, and it was fully authorized in January of 2010. And what the compact did was commit all of our our respective governmental agencies to work together in really 4 critical areas. The advocacy and cooperation in developing climate and energy policies at the state and federal level, working together regionally to develop uniform planning tools that would serve as a basis for an action plan, ultimately dedicating the staff resources to participate in the collective development of a regional climate action plan, and then reconvening on an annual basis in order to maintain that coordination, check our progress, and think about what we needed to do next. And that commitment has been one that has remained in full effect since its original authorization in January of 2010. And I think 4 years later, it really is remarkable to see how much progress has been made. And we have, again, a number of individuals, agencies, community partners who've been so instrumental to that progress. Well, we started out with the first, the 4 counties as being the lead governmental agencies. Over time, the participation, the more formal sorts of participation in the compact planning process has expanded. Each of our county governments has included within the planning process a municipal partner. They're shown here with Boynton Beach representing Palm Beach County, Fort Lauderdale representing the municipalities in Broward, Miami Beach representing those in Miami-Dade, and of course Key West and Monroe County. We've also brought in the Nature Conservancy to ensure strong environmental representation and voice in this process, and the Nature Conservancy has been an instrumental partner since the get-go. The South Florida Water Management District was brought in at the inception, really, as a key partner, recognizing so much of our community is shaped by water. This is where I think we can most immediately see the challenges that climate change and sea level rise pose for our community. South Florida Water Management District being critical to any of our adaptation strategies, and of course with such a strong technical background, they've been a vital partner. In addition, we've enjoyed the participation of Jim Murley, who has worn several hats during his participation with the compact, but again, what a connected and informed individual to lend his expertise to our process. And we've had another individual, Steve Adams, who's currently with the Institute of Sustainable Communities, who served as a partner and a facilitator in our process, and he was previously with Governor Christ's administration, and again, it goes back to those linkages, and that's how we all first met. And the partnership has continued to grow. Even those who are not formally represented in the compact planning process have is just as much of an influence as any of these entities. Our agency partners, the academic institutions, state and federal representatives, that the not-for-profits have been pivotal. By working together as a region, these entities have also been able to bring resources to invest in a process that they might not have been able to support had we been working individually. But as it is, NOAA, the Army Corps of Engineers, the technical experts who have come into the process have lent their expertise and allowed an acceleration in this planning process that has been remarkable. And I think that that has really just brought a tremendous advantage, because we've been able to point to really critical work products in a very short time, and that has allowed, I think, our governing entities and the community members to recognize that it just isn't going to be a conversation, but it's really going to result in meaningful actions and work products, and we have a lot of evidence of that today. I'm not going to be going into the detail of a lot of the action plan content, because we do have presentations today in which a lot of that's going to be picked up. But you'll remember in the compact document, we agreed to work together to develop these uniform planning tools that would aid us in the planning process, really help to prioritize the strategies and actions that we would have advanced. One of those critical tools was the development of a regional greenhouse gas emissions baseline. So this would allow us to measure where the most significant contributions of greenhouse gas emissions are coming from our region, and many of us have these same inventories that were independently developed at a county level. But by and large, we find a lot of similarity between those emissions by sector. We also developed a uniform sea level rise projection. Prior to working with our, as this collective, and in the absence of many of the technical resources that came to this process, we did have sea level rise projections, but they used different planning horizons and different ranges, and while there might have been some overlap, it was really difficult to explain how we can have communities that are just tens of miles apart, but we're looking at different sea level rise scenarios. So this ended up being an extraordinary exercise. We were able to, very shortly after developing this recommendation, have this unified projection accepted by our governing agencies, and since then we see the same sea level rise projection being referenced in documents across the state and references that are occurring at the national level. So it's one that's not only benefited our regional conversation, but has, I think, aided many other communities who've been interested in being able to take up the same issue and point to how another region's been able to get this conversation going. Another exercise that was fundamental to the planning process was the development of a uniform methodology for mapping vulnerability to sea level rise. And again, the South Florida Water Management District, NOAA, were key partners. We received data from the Emergency Management Division, and ultimately we all agreed upon the same mapping scenario where we look at the areas of vulnerability at 1, 2, and 3 foot sea level rise scenarios, and this allows us then to begin to look at the vulnerability of specific infrastructure and the economic impacts. And within the action plan, these technical documents are referenced, the data's integrated, and it really is quite influential when you start talking about these scenarios and the fact that in the four-county region, we're looking at a minimum of $30 billion in vulnerable infrastructure. So it really begs the question about what we're going to do as a region to help improve resilience and reduce the economic exposure that comes by lack of action. So once we had completed these technical work products, we were then prepared to begin a more comprehensive stakeholder process, which brought together a very diverse group of individuals representing planning agencies, transportation agencies, water utility directors, water management entities, planners, energy representatives, architects, and so forth. We're all engaged in this process. And we focused our efforts around three initial topical areas, which were the built environment, transportation, and natural systems and agriculture. And the issues that were raised in these conversations were diverse, including how are we going to advance energy, renewable energy strategies and focus on energy efficiency. What can we do to provide natural resources protection as we think about our water resources, the Everglades, our coral reef systems, not only of the quality of life benefits, but tremendous economic value, but resources that we know that characterize the region and are not just local and state, but national significance. Beaches and our vulnerable infrastructure. We know that this is an area of ongoing investment. Beach nourishment does have positive and negative influences, and we also know that sea level rise and more intense storms is only going to compound the challenges that face us today. And we, of course, have very recent examples on a national level and recent examples on a local level that really provides a dose of what we're looking at if we don't begin to amend our processes. What did I do? Okay. Then looking at drainage and flood control. We're already having these conversations. Communities who are in these low-lying coastal areas have been watching over time the increased severity and duration, frequency of these types of inundations that occur with extreme high tide event. Well, what about when you have these types of events where your systems are being overtopped by seawater and then perhaps coupled with a rainfall event? These are the types of combined influences that we really needed to think about as we started talking about this action plan and how we begin to prepare for these eventualities. Development practices and standards. So here's an individual who's having their home constructed in an area that's impacted by an extreme high tide event. You know, if they're provided with the right tools and information at the time of an investment, might they have done things differently? So we need to start having a conversation about how we integrate into our planning processes, into our permitting and our standards, the information that allows public and private investors to make wise investment decisions. Water supplies. We know again that sea level rise is going to influence groundwater quality, the chlorides in our groundwater aquifer, so that provides a pressure. We anticipate more frequent and severe droughts, which will tax our water supplies, particularly as we see populations increase. And we also anticipate that there will be more frequent and severe just water shortages overall. And need to think about how we're going to develop a strategy that helps to mitigate for that. And then, of course, hazard mitigation, apart from those extreme high tide events or extreme storms. And this is an example, again, of the type of just spatially expansive inundation and flooding that occurs during a storm. And again, recognizing that this is the type of reality that we anticipate having occur more frequently if we're not more thoughtful about how we're going to deal with these very severe and extensive rainfall events. And then transportation systems and community design, just going back to the issue of mitigation and sustainable practices and how we can overall make headway in our planning efforts by thinking more about how our communities need to look, feel, and be navigated. And so after having convened these stakeholder groups over a period of many months, we did develop a draft document that included about 110 recommendations. We went through a public vetting process that took us another year. And at the end of a full 3-year period, having developed the technical tools, convened the stakeholder groups, and then gone through the public process and the refinement of the action plan, we ended up with the final work document, which is the one that we're utilizing, advancing, and adopting today. And this document was completed in October 2012. It includes 110 recommendations across 7 critical planning areas, and it also includes a companion implementation guide. And that implementation guide references not just what the actions are, but who do we anticipate to be the partners? What's needed in order to be able to make progress? Is there a policy or a regulatory change that's needed? Are there resources? And what types of indicators can we use to measure progress and really ascertain whether or not we're making headway in any of these areas? The benefits of the action plan, I think, are quite significant. We say, well, why take a regional approach? Again, our systems are so interconnected that the assumption is that if we don't take a regional approach, we're not going to gain the sort of a comprehensive effectiveness that constitutes the basis for sustainability as a region. Individually, we can all be very, very progressive, but if your neighbors are not, that type of resilience that we need as a community has to be one that is shared. It provides a framework for building that community resilience through strategies that focus on the environment, our long-term economy, and public health and our community. It provides a 5-year time frame for implementation that doesn't propose that all of our actions are complete and we can walk away in 5 years, but it provides a foundation for the types of initiatives that we can tackle in 5 years that will continue to be implemented over a longer-term time frame. It addresses both mitigation and adaptation issues, recognizing the importance of regional and individual actions, and that's why it's so important to be here today because, again, while the initial concept was initiated at the county level, there's a whole lot of activity that needs to take from the individual level up in order to ensure implementation. And so it is designed to apply and reach across all scales of community and government. The 7 focal areas are detailed here. Again, they're going to be highlighted in the conversations that follow, so I'm not going to go through those just now. The question has been raised about how does the Regional Climate Action Plan fit into everything else that we're doing. Jim Early was speaking earlier. He is, as many of you may know, overseeing a 7-county planning process called 750. That stretches 2 regional planning council. It includes the same service or jurisdictional area that the compact process does. We see all of these kind of being nested like the little Chinese stacking dolls, where we have orders of scale. You have the 750 planning effort that is supported by the compact because we're actually feeding into the resilience element of that document, and it's all and the types of considerations that are being made in the climate conversation are being considered in the transportation sector and the economic considerations. We also have, and will continue to see, the importance of activities at a lower scale. The county initiatives are not replaced or displaced by the regional plan, but instead it provides that type of coordination again to ensure that we're complete in our process. And then, of course, action at the municipal and even the local level is going to be paramount. And we will continue to need the individual master plans that are advanced by communities, comprehensive plans that are advanced at the local level, and those local initiatives and investments. The regional scale projects don't get implemented without them. I've already spoken about our support for the climate resilience element, and I just wanted to acknowledge that the compact partners and that process are providing the foundation. The technical tools and the planning approach that we've taken is now being expanded at that larger scale. So again, it speaks to the efficiencies and values that are gained by working through that type of a collaborative process. But implementation is going to be the real key next step. And it's going to involve and rely upon a diverse group of players, of partners, of individual actions, and continued collaboration. And that's why the type of conversation that we are having or hope to have today will be one in which we hope that we can maximize each of our efforts, and you can aid us, and ideally we'll be aiding you as well. We've already begun this conversation about expanding the partnership beyond just those key partners. We advanced a Mayor's Climate Action Pledge at this last year's summit. Basically, this is an initiative that invites municipal participation into the process as providing support for the compact, acknowledging the value of the Regional Climate Action Plan, and encouraging a collaborative process and pairing in its implementation. We have a number of communities today that have already signed on to the Mayor's Action Pledge. I think Susie may be talking a little bit more about that, but this is an area where you could be speaking to your community leaders and talking about this initiative, because that invite did go out. And right now in Broward County, I'm pleased to say that we have about 50% of the total population that's included in municipalities who've already signed on to the Action Pledge. And so what are those additional opportunities for engagement? Well, this is where I want to go ahead and transition to Susie, who will be talking about those kind of scales of implementation and opportunities for leadership. Thank you.